Let me unmute you, buddy.
There we go. Sorry. Where were you? Dude, I was muted.
You're ready to party, dude.
Dude, I am ready to party. Notice, hey, flannel, bro. Flannel. Nice and cold.
Why aren't you wearing a suit, damn it? Come on, man.
Wearing a what?
A suit.
Suits are no.
Suits are what? Say it again.
Suits are for fags. Suits are for fags. Listen, sorry, bro. Sorry, dude. I'm in my flannel. It's cold outside.
You're feeling your flannel. That's all right. You want to look like I'm
a lumberjack.
Bum.
I'm a lumberjack.
Go ahead. I'm going to sink my chair a little bit.
I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. I sleep all night and I work all day. He's a lumberjack and he's okay. He sleeps all night and he works all what?
But I'm the gay one.
Dude, do you ever watch Monty Python? The lumberjack song.
No, who you're talking about right now.
I'm
a millennial. You got to remember, man. I'm a millennial. I don't know this shit.
Dude, don't act like you're so young. You're getting close to old
young, dude.
Farts. You're getting close to old farts.
I'm still in my 20s.
No, you're not.
Still in my 20s.
No, you're not.
I don't care about getting old, dude.
Dude, you're
Can I get some lip filler? Do I need Botox?
Yes. Do you have
any recommendations?
I want you to see some. Once you get some duck lips,
you can inject it in your lip. You can.
I want you to have those duck lips.
I'm gonna have some duck lips.
Yeah.
You know what? Screw you, man. All right, we're live.
We are live. Hey, listen, man. Great news. Somalis are coming in from everywhere. They're taking over. Are you excited? I love all the Somali stuff. Hey, what kind of food? What is Somali food? I mean, what now? Okay, Indians have poop festivals. What does Somalis do? We need to get up to speed on all of our third world shit.
Wait. Yeah, let's go through here. I wonder if I could do this here live.
What's that?
We could go through the some cultural practice. Well, we do know Somalia just put sex crime laws on their books as of 2018.
Do they have sex in Somalia, or is it more like
I think it's all just rape, generally speaking.
Rape. You know, I am willing to make the argument, and I believe I'm not even saying this in a funny way. I'm not trying to be funny because I think
you're being facetious.
No, I'm not being facetious. Somalis are not human beings. That's not meant to be funny. I'm being very, very honest. I know they have some they're primates. They're definitely primates, but
that's hilarious. They're going in and out. What is going on with your connection?
Dude, it's your connection. My connection.
Freezing, you're cutting out. What the hell, Mark?
You look great.
No, you're dropping out, dude.
Am I really?
You're dropping out. We're gonna
I don't mean to be.
Have to let you go, man.
Is it I'm gone, huh? I'm just because you look like you're in and out.
You sound like a robot.
Damn it.
You look like you. Hang on, let me check. Roger! Roger's coming to you, buddy. He's coming in the chat.
Is he coming in the chat?
Yeah, look out for him for a second. I'm going to look at something on my end. See how this is going.
You sound great. You look great. Has anybody told you look great? Did your wife tell you look great today?
She did.
Okay. She wasn't lying. You look good, Travis.
Don't get all weird on me, dude.
Oh no, I'm not. No, it's not weird at all. I think that maybe I started going off on the Somalis, and it's a shame that the Mexicans have the tamale, because if the Somalis had the tamale, we could work with that. We could come up with Somali tamales. You know what I'm saying?
Somali tamales. What would they be filled with?
Oh God, from Somalia. Listen, I don't, dude. there is not. There's so many nasty cultures out there, dude, that are just disgusting. I am convinced though that they're not human beings. I think there are throwbacks. I do. I think there's missing links, and the Somalis are definitely fall within that category. I know they have to be removed from the United States, though. What's the quickest way we can do to get rid of the Somalis?
As far as what we can say on the live broadcast, I'm not sure. What's your ideas there?
Oh, just whatever's fastest and most economical.
Fastest, yeah. Economical.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, the economies of scale. How many are here? They say there's 100,000 up there in Minnesota. Could you imagine 100,000 of those filthy, disgusting creatures living around that? I mean, what were these people thinking?
Right over here.
I
don't know, but I don't remember. Well, yeah, did your generation get a like a brief or like a vote or any say in, hey, we're just going to start importing people from third world countries? Do you remember that in any part of the conversation in the 80s and the 90s? Or was that just didn't happen? They just kind of started doing it.
They just started bringing them in. Well, the problem is that people are not when you have an affluent society like we created in America, a modern affluent society, and the wealthier it gets, the easier it gets. Men take their eye off the ball. We get distracted. We want to get laid. We want to seek pleasure. We'd like to be able to relax. We've created this whole society around, the object in life is to pursue pleasure,
softness,
and to retire, to be soft. No, it's horrible. And so that's what we've done. And we've let females come in and run the show. Again, that's mating strategy, because if you just keep saying yes to females, you're more than likely to get your weekend blowjob, and and all's well at home. So we do that. And then when people suggest that we bring in third world shithole, I don't even know what you want to call them. We go, we're a compassionate people. We're nice.
We're benevolent.
We're benevolent. And it's the right thing to do. And by the way, it's immigrants that made America great, Travis. Did you know that? It's immigrants that made America great. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Please. Yes. Let me tell you. Any woman will tell you this. Any woman or any simp, pussified male will tell you that it was immigrants that made America great, Travis. I don't know if you knew that or not. You hadn't heard that though, huh? So Somalis and Pakistanis and Afghanistanis and Indians, all these, whatever you want to call them. I think we should have brought in a bunch of Aboriginals. Canada brought in a bunch of Aborigines. Isn't that weird? They bring in Aboriginals from Australia that live in the desert, and now they live in Canada, and there's not a kangaroo for miles. So I don't know what they're eating.
The center of gravity for Somali immigration in Minnesota, especially the Twin Cities, which hosts one of the largest Somali communities in the country. Census and survey data suggest tens of thousands of residents of Somali heritage, with the majority now citizens or green card holders, but with a significant minority still in various temporary precarious statuses. Trump has recently zeroed in on this population as a national problem, publicly saying the U.S. should stop taking Somalis, send many of them back, and that Minnesota has become a hub for fraudulent financial activity tied to Somali networks. That's right. Even before the Doge investigations kicked off, we were finding out that the Somali population somehow has cornered the market as some of the most ripe, scandalous scam activity for federal government programs in the entire country, to the tune of billions of dollars. In response, Immigration and Customs Enforcement has launched a targeted operation in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area aimed at undocumented Somali immigrants and those whose temporary protected status is being terminated, with media confirming an ICE surge in the region. So, to Mark's point, that's what we're covering here. Obviously, this is a problem. This is a problem. Somalia is one of the most broken, violent, and corrupt societies on earth. When you move large chunks of that population into Western cities, you inevitably import those dysfunctions along with the people. There's a strong case to be made that is part of the culture of Somalia to be like this. The gap between American expectations and everyday Somali norms is not cute diversity. It is a jarring clash between a high-maintenance civilization and a barely functioning clan war state. For those not familiar with Matt Walsh's coverage on this, highly recommend checking out one of his shows. He talked about that. Apparently, that guy that I don't know his name. I probably wouldn't even know how to pronounce his name. He was running as a candidate, and he looked straight out of that movie with Tom Hanks, the Captain Phillips or whatever.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
look at me.
The mayor. Yeah, look at me.
I'm the
I am the captain now.
But apparently the dynamics of the Somali clan helped him lose or contributed to it. So now we're paying attention to warring third world clan factions.
Have you seen their heads?
In our American body politic.
There's their skull. Have you seen their heads?
Do I got to put it on screen?
Yeah, put some up on
screen. Don't I?
Because a lot of people think I'm kidding when I say I don't believe these are human beings. I think they are throwbacks.
What am I Googling here? Just Somali foreheads?
Yeah, just put it on
Mark,
Somali.
you're breaking up, dude.
Fuck.
You're breaking up. You are breaking up bad. Oh, this is just mean, man.
Show him.
Oh no, I don't know if I want to
show it.
Awful. I'll just show the candidate.
No, dude, show a bunch of them.
The guy from the is that the actor? I don't know. I don't know if I'm looking at the actor from the movie or the actual Minnesota. Let's try. He was running for governor?
Mayor.
Okay. All right, let's see if I can find it here. Okay. Hey, God, maybe I could do this side by side. Let's do this one. Yeah, we'll do this live on air, folks. Don't you just love it? And then I can go back. This is so mean. This was Mark's idea. Do you take all credit for this?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, let's see here. Let's see if I could do. Okay. Let's play a game here. This is for the comments here. Is this the actor or the mayoral candidate from Somali? Here we go. Show on screen here. Which is it?
That's the actor.
Oh, you already know, don't you? That's the actor?
That's the actor.
All right, let's see who's right here. All right, this is going to give it away then.
Yeah, that's the guy, the Marxist future mayor. Yeah, they all. Wouldn't you want that as a neighbor? Don't you want that as a neighbor? Look at that, man. What's going on? What's going on with that?
I can't believe this type of stuff. Dude, I can't believe what we cover now on this show.
No, I can't believe what we've brought into this country in mass quantities. What are we doing?
Isn't even. Let's You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
There we go. Uh, Somalia is a textbook failed state. Clan militias, al-Shabaab, all operate like overlapping crime syndicates with extortion, aid theft, fraud, and routine violence baked into daily life. Human rights reports and a judiciary so weak and politicized that court orders are routinely ignored while bribes and clan loyalty decide outcomes. Fragility studies on Somalia point to uncontrolled weapons, youth radicalization, and pervasive corruption as structural features of society. And these are not rare exceptions. The environment produces survival habits, lying to officials, gaming aid, clan favoritism, casual violence that are completely at odds with the trust-based, rules-driven order for a Western country that needs to function. So we covered on this show as well the rampant sexual violence that country experiences. Matter of fact, just within the last 10 years, looks, and as far as enforcement on those, I mean, we'll see how that goes. But you're talking about a third world country that's politically corrupt to its core. So it's kind of a brilliant formula. If you're going to dismantle the West, which is currently corrupt, they know it's corrupt. They don't really care. They're not really doing anything about it. They just, in turn, do their own corruption. Then they come here. So if you're trying to fleece on here that are so used to their country failing, they just wouldn't really think twice about it happening over here. Can you hear me, buddy?
Yes, sir, I can. Breaking up.
Mark?
Yes,
okay.
I'm here.
Little delayed.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go on here. So most Somali refugees arrive with very low institutions. Many depend heavily on welfare and public assistance long after arrival. Research on Somali integration notes that large numbers cluster in enclaves, preserve tight clan and religious public conduct intact. Studies of Somalia refugees in U.S. states like Massachusetts found that even basic hygiene practices had to be explicitly taught during resettlement. Folks, are y'all listening? Payers had to fund basic hygiene practices for their settlement in Massachusetts. Things like consistent use of toothbrushes and toothpaste being introduced as part of cultural orientation to American standards. When people from a place with minimal infrastructure and fragile public health systems are dropped into dense American cities, the adjustment does not happen magically, and the resulting housing, sanitation, and behavioral issues are not just differences, they are experienced by neighbors as squalor. The region is being targeted. Even sympathetic academic work admits that Somali communities often remain separate, highly dependent on welfare, and strongly attached to the practices and power structures drawn from a war-torn clan-based culture. For ordinary Americans who have to share schools, apartment blocks, buses, and city services, what they see is not vibrant culture, but miserable disorder. Is action very similar to seeing a poop festival held up as something you must respect. Insist that questioning this cultural import is hateful, while local residents live with the crime, dependency, and filth that comes with failed state habits. Resentment is not just predictable, it is rational at this point. Yes, sir. Yeah, and we talked about it. The Indian Cow Dung Festival that has been marketed online as the Corky Poop Festival. Smear it on their bodies, throw it at each other, and wade around in it as if it were a mud bath. Only this is literal excrement. Believers may claim it is spiritual or medicinal, but to anyone raised with modern germ theory and basic hygiene, it looks Western viewers see people rubbing feces into their skin and hair and instinctively think of parasites, bacterial infection, and the smell that would cling to everything afterward. Defenders call criticism xenophobic, yet they never seriously address the xenophobic, basically. Oh, did we lose Mark? I lost my buddy, man. I'm a man down. I'm a man down in here. Let's see what's going on here. That's all right, folks. We're going to continue with the show. This is the Defiance Daily Show. I'm your host, Travis Roberts, co-hosting with Mark Pruitt over here. We're having some faulty connection issues over there with Mark, but that's okay. Fear not, the show must go on. Different ways to support us. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can share some of this. I'll be a good boy while Mark is gone. Please, folks, I do encourage you to visit defiancepress.com. We are not just a media company here at Defiance. We are a book publishing outfit and a media company, and working on a few other aspects of our business enterprise over here. But that's defiancepress.com. Go and check out our books. You got holidays, you got birthdays around the corner, and a lot of folks are reading. We're coming to find out. So if you're interested in finding different ways to support us, go to defiancepress.com. Check out our books. Browse the titles. Browse the authors. We are working on quite a few different aspects of our catalog here, but you can check out all the material we have available for sale. Go ahead and click view this book, and it'll send you to the details of the book, including the links to go and publish. We have a lot of new releases that are upcoming, so stay tuned for more at defiancepress.com. And if you are in the market for a publisher, go ahead and hit that Get Published link there at defiancepress.com. That's Get Published at defiancepress.com. Please, we highly encourage you to watch the video, follow the prompts, and submit the details on your books. One thing I do want to emphasize is we do not keep manuscripts here at Defiance Press and Publishing. We are not a third world outfit. This is not a Somali community ran organization. Offshore, everything is done here within the United States, mainly at points of operation here in Texas. When you submit a manuscript, if we contract with you, that's the only instance in which we will retain a manuscript. Manuscripts that are not signed on with us, we simply get rid of them. They're out of our catalog. They're out of the way. We do not do anything shady with these manuscripts. I do want to emphasize that. We do not run shop here like that. That's defiancepress.com. Again, that's defiancepress.com. Other ways to support us, go ahead and visit J. Bradley Custom Pools. If you are in the market for a pool, yes, it's getting cold over here in Houston, Texas, but it's also getting hot, and then back to cold again, and then hot, and then humid, and then sticky, and then raining, and then it's summer, and then it's winter again. So we get all seasons in a week. This is all fairly predictable here, but it's never there's never a bad time in the season here in Tejas to get you a custom pool built. You can also, of course, get one with the heater built in. That's J. Bradley Custom Pools. They service Houston, Dallas, in the Austin and areas, check out some of this work here. They do some really, really good work. And again, like we said on last week's show, the chemtrails are free of charge. They come with any pool installment. So just keep that in mind as you're looking. That's J. Bradley Custom Pools, jbradleypools.com. Go ahead and reach out to them at 832-813-5340. That's 832-813-5340. Please do not forget to let them know that Defiance sent you. Also, go and check out rftmedia.com. So your stop shop for IT technical support and needs. They have a lot of comprehensive services from web design to business technology. We utilize them for a number of different basic comprehensive services as well as custom solutions. So if you're in the market for optimization, you're looking at AI and how you can implement it within your organization, how to work it better, how to streamline your workflow, your leads. And especially now, they're working on some interesting and exciting prospects for political campaigns. That's rftmedia.com. Again, that's rftmedia.com. If you're curious about their services, go ahead and contact them at rftmedia.com. Please, please, folks, let them know that Defiance sent you so they know where the lead came from. Go ahead and hit that contact button there at rftmedia.com. Fill out the prompts. Fill out the information and submit your details there. They will get back in touch with you. We've been using them for over 10 years here and can't say enough about the team over at rftmedia.com. So really appreciate their partnership and really grateful that we're able to support them and then for them to support us. Again, you're watching the Defiance Daily Show. We are live every Monday at noon Central Standard Time. That's noon Central Standard Time. So if you want to catch the show live, again, that's noon on Mondays. And of course, the broadcast goes out afterwards, and you can find us there. Now, let's go and check in on our buddy Mark over there, see what's going on with him. And it seems like we do have a man down. We do have a man down, but fear not. I'm sure there's a way I can get Mark in here. Just bear with me, folks. Going to do one thing over here. I guess Mark was feeling like he's too good for us now, so that might be it. He's kind of a big deal as of lately, so this is just how it's going with him. Okay, bear with me, folks. I'm going to go grab this for Mark, and let's see if I can figure this out real quick. It's over to Messenger. Okay, not sure what he's doing here, man. Not sure what the deal is. But let's see if I can fix it. Mark just, I guess he just doesn't want to play anymore. Okay, folks, just bear with me. I'm going to pop over an email real quick to Marcus before we go into the latest and greatest news details. Let me see if I can get him in here. The show, it's just not the same without Mark. We got to have Mark in here, man. Mark at Defiance Press. And folks, I do want to send out, that is something I forgot to mention there. If you are curious about publishing a book with us, you can visit or send an email to mark@defiancepress.com. Again, that's mark@defiancepress.com. You can also give us a shout, 281-581-9300. That's 281-581-9300. If we don't get back to you right away, just bear with us. We'll be in touch. We'll get you into the queue, and we'll get your questions answered as soon as possible. We've had a lot of interest as of late here. Quite an uptick of activity in submissions. I know folks are taking off for the holiday. So again, it sounds like a lot of you are spreading the word. We really appreciate your support. Again, please, please, please do not forget to visit defiancepress.com. Check out our book catalog, support our authors, order the books. And again, if you're in the market for a book publisher, hit that get published link at defiancepress.com and we'll go from there. So, okay, let's see what we got going on here. Man, I'm not sure what's going on. Let's make sure he's okay. Okay. All right, so let's jump into some of the news details here. We did get some recent vaccine news that we're definitely going to cover here today, and I have a pretty large stack in front of me, so I'm going to try to hit the news succinctly, professionally, and give y'all a good write-up of some of the latest articles that I found interesting. Now, I know there's a lot of drama in the news with regard to Candace Owens and Tim Pool. So I just, yeah, we're going to get to some point in covering that because I've got a few comments on the back and forth between this. There's a lot of interesting nuance to Candace Owens's claim, and I'm mainly saying that because I'm probably 2 weeks behind on her show now. So I haven't been able to podcast and listen to as much as I've been able to. But one thing I did notice in covering Candace Owens's claims is that as I was following along and listening to what she was saying on her show, and I need to do a better job of documenting this. I think one interesting thing we have members of our team doing is we're pulling the transcripts from her show since Charlie Kirk's death to really nail down exactly what she's saying so we can deliver some quality reporting to you. Because one thing I noticed is while I was listening to try to catch up with some of her claims, at the same time, I'm seeing on social media and different social media influencers on the conservative side, and nothing was adding up to, they were saying one thing about what she was covering, and it wasn't accurate at all. Matter of fact, it was just outright lies at some period of time. There was about a 2-week campaign. I remember this where she was accusing Erica Kirk, or maybe she was insinuating it, or, going along a lot of different lies. So one thing I picked up right away was that they're not covering what she's saying honestly. And it seems like they're avoiding some of the main details that are being uncovered there. Now, it does appear that it was a very public, that's why I'm very hesitant to just cover what it seems like everybody, it seems like a lot of this coverage is stuff that they want us to be talking about. And I really want to get into more of the details of her claims now, because we can't trust the FBI with a lot of things. The official narratives are typically dead on arrival when it comes to the public now. And that's really no fault of conservatives or conspiracy theorists or anything along those lines. We've been lied to by these institutions constantly to our face. We know we're being lied to about a lot of it. So that's not really helping any cases as far as these open-ended questions. And then typically whenever the FBI or these alphabet agencies come to address these questions, we only get more on top of it, which creates even more skepticism. But here's what I will say. I'm looking forward to the live stream from TPUSA to see if some of these, and again, I need to find the latest story here. We'll get to some of that stuff towards the end, but I just want to know if Candace is going to join or not. That was a very weird way, I think, to challenge a debate and then coordinate it live on Twitter for the public. I mean, don't you usually drop in to someone's and then coordinate it if you're really going to legit go about it? Now, apparently she couldn't come on site. It conflicted with their shows. People were saying Candace Owens was, backtracking on it because Candace did say, tell me the date, the time, and the place, and I'll make it happen. But she did recommend going in virtual, and then TPUSA responded to my understanding that the show will go on with or without her. So that's not, that it, look, this stuff is just it all just seems so disingenuous now, a little bit to me. So we'll get into some of the coverage to it. I want to see some of these big questions get addressed. I'm sure a lot of the people listening to this show know that we've heard some of these accusations and some of these questions. We got some of our own. There are weird things like Utah Valley Police not retaining the evidence of him turning himself in, something that could be very helpful to the case, but somehow destroyed the video or didn't retain it or whatever you want to say. That's odd. That's odd and something that isn't supposed to happen in standard protocol, especially for a death penalty case. So we know there's some questions at a minimum, at a minimum. All right, so let's get into the news here. And some of these articles are this really got my attention on a lot of this. So, okay, so this was this digital health track that the planet seems to be going on really is starting to pique my interest, because we've seen this talked about for decades on end about the digital ID and the carbon footprint and the carbon trading and the surveillance grid, and everything in the name of health and safety seems to be gearing towards basically our complete and total enslavement here. And here's a piece of it. The Gates WHO Digital Control Grid, a deep dive into global surveillance infrastructure disguised as public health. So the architecture for a global surveillance state is being erected in plain sight, cloaked in the language of pandemic preparedness and health equity. What's emerging is a sweeping digital infrastructure that connects vaccine records, biometric identification, AI, surveillance, and cross-border tracking systems, all under coordination of the WHO and heavily funded by, of course, Bill Gates' philanthropic empire. So the Global Digital Health Certification Network in June 2023, the WHO officially adopted the European Union's digital COVID certification system as the foundation for a worldwide network known as Global Digital Health Certification Network, or GDHCN. This wasn't a hypothetical proposal This wasn't a hypothetical proposal or future consideration. It's operational right now. With approximately 2 billion people already carrying digital health records connected to the system. Did y'all know this? So if you didn't, let's go through some of the details today. The GDHCN operates as what WHO calls a trust network, positioning itself as a trust anchor that enables countries to verify digital health credentials across borders. While WHO claims it won't hold individual data, the system creates a global infrastructure where vaccination status, health records, and eventually much more can be tracked, verified, and potentially controlled as a condition of travel, employment, or access to services. I think it's fair to assume that this would absolutely be a mechanism of control. We saw all the parameters and you can almost say mild enforcement of COVID protocol showed us. I think we're in for a rude awakening here in our lifetime, at least within the next 5 to 10 years. I think we will absolutely see another pandemic hit the shelves, and a lot of these measures being ramped up expeditiously. And never forget, in these wartime scenarios, so the war on COVID, while we were all complaining about the draconian laws and the enforcement of staying in home and everything like that, in the background, billions of dollars were spent on setting up an even more terrifying infrastructure, and this has something to do with it. The system builds directly on COVID-19 vaccine passports, expanding beyond pandemic responses, of course, to encompass the digitization of the international certificate of vaccination or verification of prescriptions across borders, the international patient summary, verification of vaccine certifications within and across borders, and certification of public health professionals. This represents a permanent digital infrastructure, not a temporary emergency measure. The 50 in 5 campaign, racing towards universal digital ID. And I've heard a lot of folks on the right talk about how this would be a good thing, because if you get universal digital ID, we can clamp down on a lot of illegal immigration. Here's the news, folks. We already have laws on the books to get this done. You don't need a more powerful and draconian measure like a universal digital ID to stop illegal immigration. There's laws on the books to already get this done. This is just an excuse to help people on the right swallow this stuff. Don't fall for it. While the GDHCN establishes health credential infrastructure, a parallel initiative called 50 in 5 is rapidly deploying comprehensive digital public infrastructure across 50 countries by 2028. This campaign, jointly operated by the United Nations and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, has already enrolled 30 nations in what amounts to be a global digital identity revolution. The 50 in 5 framework consists of 3 interlocking components. Listen to this: digital IDs systems, fast payment platforms, and massive data sharing networks between government and private entities. Countries participating include Bangladesh, Brazil, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Ukraine, and dozens more across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Of course, Ukraine's going to be thrown into the mix because during wartime, that is the favorite time for these companies to start experimentation on civilian population. So you can bet it's definitely being rolled out to a higher degree in a more intrusive degree in Ukraine, more than likely right now. Absolutely. Ukraine's implementation offers a disturbing preview of where this leads. The country's DIIA app has become what officials proudly call the state in a smartphone, with 23 million users carrying digital government services, identification, and records on their phone. Deputy Prime Minister Fedorov explained the strategy bluntly. The pandemic has accelerated our progress. People have no choice but to trust technology. Listen to how that's being worded here. And never forget, there's a public way that's spoken to, right? There's a way that the public is spoken to. But in this, for their inner circle, there's also another underlying message for the way they communicate with each other on these programs. The pandemic has accelerated our progress. People have no choice but to trust technology. You catching my drift there? Picking up what I'm putting down? People have no choice but to trust technology. The Gates funded biometric backbone. So underpinning these systems, the MOSIP, the Modular Open Source Identity Platform, heavily funded by the Gates Foundation, provides the technical architecture for governments to implement biometric identification systems, storing fingerprints, facial recognition data, and iris scans tied to individual health and vaccination records. African nations are leading the rollout. Again, they always experiment in these third world countries first. Whether it's a vaccine program or some program like this, they're always on the front lines for this kind of thing. Pretty interesting, to say the least here. Togo's Minister of Digital Economy called for free cross-border and interoperable digital ID using MOSIP. The neighboring countries like Benin, Burkina Faso, and Senegal coordinating their systems for continental interoperability. MOSIP. So I'm also, it's always interesting to hear the names for these programs. Let's see if there's any other underlying meaning with the word MOSIP. As let's just see if there's any. I'm just curious here if there's any yeah, okay. Nothing there. I always get curious. I'm sure if I dug into it a little more, probably can't do it on live here, but usually they have some underlying meanings tied to these programs. So the abbreviation actually is a signal to something else here, but not seeing it in this one doesn't mean I won't find it, but interesting to say the least. The vision is explicit. Every adult in Ethiopia registered in a biometric national identification system by the end of 2025 with health records permanently linked to that digital identity. Similar programs are proliferating across Kenya, Rwanda, Ghana, Nigeria, and beyond. And Ethiopia's digital health identification program launched during COVID to track vaccines is now expanding to include routine child immunizations, health insurance, chronic disease monitoring, and drug refills. So my next segment in here, I'm going to go into an old 2012 corporate white paper because this all ties in with the climate change agenda as well. So in parallel to these health practices and digital ID and the social score credit system that we're seeing in China. This is all relatable and all similar in vein. ID 2020, vaccines as the gateway to digital identity. The connection between vaccination programs and digital identity isn't coincidental, it's strategic. ID 2020, a nonprofit alliance that includes Microsoft, the Gates Foundation, explicitly uses immunization as an opportunity to establish digital identity. In 2019, ID 2020 launched a program in Bangladesh in partnership with Gavi, the vaccine alliance heavily funded by Gates. That's GAVI, to provide digital identity alongside vaccines. The model is straightforward. When individuals receive vaccinations, their biometric data is captured and stored in a permanent digital identity system. The justification centers on tracking who has been vaccinated, preventing duplicate doses, and ensuring vaccine equity. But the infrastructure being built extends far beyond these vaccines. Of course it does. Once biometric identification is tied to health records, it becomes the foundation for comprehensive digital tracking of individuals across all governments and commercial interactions. Again, it's always in the name of safety, public health, and your own vested interests, folks. It's also, I'm sure we'll hear the excuses about the convenience of biometric identity and universal ID, and everything's just super convenient, and it's easier for you peasants just to do it. But the powers that be and the people that run these organizations, they will be the last in line. They will not be eating bugs like the rest of us either. And meanwhile, they're buying up hundreds and hundreds of acres of ripe farmland across the United States and across the world. But we're not supposed to pay attention to that. We're just supposed to be jacked into our matrix. So the architecture, the technical capabilities being deployed are pretty extraordinary. Facial recognition systems, iris scanners, fingerprint databases are interconnected through AI-driven analytics that can identify individuals in crowds, track movements across borders, and compile comprehensive behavioral profiles. The FBI's biometric database alone contains over 641 million facial images accessible through facial recognition technology. So these systems increasingly rely on AI to match faces, predict behavior, and flag individuals deemed threats or non-compliant. Cross-border health data sharing initiatives like LACPASS, LACPASS, in Latin America demonstrate how vaccination records can be verified internationally through QR codes embedded in digital certificates. While presented as convenience, of course, these systems create infrastructure for tracking individual movement across borders in real time. One of the big agendas back this, for folks that do remember Agenda 2021, we're talking about a total surveillance state right now. And a lot of these initiatives can't get passed without going through things like pandemics. So keep that in mind whenever the next panic scenario rolls out and whatever war is lurking around the corner as we can give up more of our rights to do this stuff. Privacy advocates warn that code-based vaccination certifications enable prolonged surveillance when scanned at restaurants, theaters, workplaces, or border crossings. Without strict safeguards, this data can be retained, sold to third parties, or provided to law enforcement for purposes far removed from public health. Of course, that's going to be the main reason for it. Okay. This is all about total control, total surveillance. One of the main points of constantly collecting data from population and citizenry isn't so they can gear ads for you. Okay. Mass data collection and surveillance is all about the predictability of a population. So you can run different simulations on what the population will accept or it won't accept in the future. So this is a huge part of this. And also down the road, of course, it's about complete control. They don't want private transportation. That's got to be a thing of the past. You'll see a lot more efforts to encourage mass transport, mass transportation, different ways to do that. And some real cool technologies will be deployed out to do this, but all for one goal down the road, and that's individual restriction of movement. That's a big part of the plans here ahead of us as we gear towards the magic year of 2050. So we're going to see a lot of interesting things in the meantime, but I continue on here. So the WHO's pandemic agreement, by the way, adopted in May 2025 after years of negotiation, establishes a framework that WHO officials insist doesn't infringe on national sovereignty. Sure, it doesn't. The text include language affirming nations' right to set their own policies. So, yes, the UN is really good at, we don't enforce these restrictions, but we're going to give each country their own blueprint for enforcing these policies. Folks, we're already in a world government, okay? It's already here. These intergenerational plans and everything that we find, they're already ongoing. I mean, down to our plumbing code. For folks that don't know, a lot of those standards come from the United Nations, whether you believe it or not. But the agreement, of course, mandates significant infrastructure changes. It requires countries to strengthen digital health certification systems, disease surveillance networks, very interesting one, international data sharing. Amendments to the international health regulations create new categories of health emergencies and establish coordinating financial mechanisms that direct pandemic preparedness funding towards country implementing WHO preferred systems. So again, WHO preferred systems. So a lot of these systems are already vetted out. They're already suspect out. And now the rollout's beginning as of this year. Of course, we don't know about this. We're all being distracted by different political stories. But meanwhile, these giant billion-dollar programs are continuing unabated in the background. Critics, including U.S. legislators, express concern that these agreements can create pressure for countries to adopt standardized digital health infrastructure that could be expanded beyond a pandemic response. Well, of course, that's the plan. That's always the reason for these things. There's nothing benevolent about an international body getting together for the safety and health of the public. Okay. I always argue that after the First World War, the precursor to the United Nations, the League of Nations, if you go and read the minute notes there and you go back to the Club of Rome documents there, it's all about how not enough people seem to have perished in World War I. So a lot of these meeting notes and the way these people talk to each other, it's nothing like what you're seeing here in this public feel-good measures for things that they care about. There's nothing in reality about a benevolent government entity or world body, especially. The WHO's track record during COVID-19, its delayed responses to the Wuhan outbreak, probably intentional, initial promotion of dubious Chinese government claims and failure to thoroughly investigate the lab leak hypothesis fuels skepticism about granting the organization expanded coordination authority. Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with that. And that's a light way this article is putting it because, of course, we here believe that a lot of these things were intentional and by design. Now, legal and civil liberties experts have cataloged serious concerns about vaccine passport systems and digital health certificates. The Brennan Center warned that digital verification creates opportunities for prolonged surveillance of people's movements, potentially violating freedom of association rights. Imagine people being jacked into this. And let's say you work for a one of these medical programs or one of these agencies in the government. Now you're part of this, and you decide to become a whistleblower. One of the things that every government across the planet has trouble with is tracking down who these whistleblowers are. Do you think something like this helps or hurts that effort in the future? Just keep that in the back of your mind. Biometric data presents unique dangers because, unlike passwords, or ID cards, biometrics cannot be changed if compromised. A breach exposing fingerprints, facial scans, or iris patterns creates permanent security vulnerabilities, yet these systems are being deployed rapidly in developing nations with minimal data protection frameworks. Again, I would argue, most likely by design in that case, folks. Yeah, and this goes on. Bill Gates has become the face of this transformation, not because of conspiracy, but because of documented investment and advocacy. The Gates Foundation has pledged over $1.75 billion toward pandemic response and digital health infrastructure. Gates partnerships span the World Health Organization, Gavi, ID 2020, MOSIP, and the 50 and 5 campaign. Gates has acknowledged the controversy, telling BBC that only recently, as I've been out in public, some people yell at me that I'm tracking them. He dismissed such concern as absurd while simultaneously promoting digital certificates that would show who's been tested and who's been vaccinated. Yes, and these coming from the folks that really like to harp on about RFK Jr.'s lack of health credentials, but you got this guy out there who's pledging billions of dollars into this surveillance technology and these vaccine programs. Pretty interesting, especially for someone who believes the world is overpopulated. I'm sure that's a healthy relationship there. The disconnect illustrates a fundamental tension. Gates and other advocates view digital identity and health tracking as a benign tool for efficiency in their favorite word, equity. Critics see an emerging surveillance architecture where access to society becomes conditional on compliance with digital tracking systems. Again, part of this new world order. It ties in with everything else. Your carbon tracking is definitely going to be a part of this, folks. So if you got your heater on too much during the wintertime, eventually down the road, being able to limit your consumption of energy, definitely meat is in the cards here. Got to take meat off the table for the general public, not for the people that are buying up this farmland in this ruling class, the Gates Foundation actually being one of them, buying up a lot of rich soiled farmland here in America. Of course, the most troubling is the precedence of suspending constitutional liberties during declared emergencies. The COVID-19 response demonstrated how quickly governments can impose lockdowns, mandate medical interventions, restrict movement, and surveil populations when public health is invoked. So you can imagine how devastating this will look in the future with another pandemic. And you've got these technical systems just absolutely clamping down on the public, definitely clamping down on whatever material is allowed to be viewed. You remember the misinformation campaigns, labeling doctors, taking their license that were speaking out against the interventions that COVID-19 posed. And of course, the where the virus came from to begin with. And I think we all know the answer to that now. I think the good news about that is a lot of folks are skeptical. So as I'm covering stuff like this, I think you guys know some apprehensiveness is healthy at a minimum. We should be questioning this every step of the way. And you can make arguments that you don't even need this kind of stuff. Yeah, the infrastructure being built, digital health certificates, biometric identification, AI surveillance, cross-border tracking. It doesn't dismantle when emergencies end. And of course, that's the case. A lot of these powers that we gave to the government after 9/11 with the Patriot Act, Did any of those powers get reversed, or have they expanded? Every time you give a little more to the government, it's only going to expand over time. We all know this. It's government 101. Their only purpose and role is self-preservation. The convergence of WHO coordination, Gates Foundation funding, biometric identification systems, AI surveillance technology, and digital health certificates raises fundamental questions about power, privacy, and freedom. So, who controls the biometric and health data being collected? What prevents mission creep from vaccination tracking to comprehensive life surveillance? Folks, you can bet so much of your activity is I remember when smart TVs were first being rolled out, and I was made fun of because there was a story on it was a Vizio TV that had a warning in the pamphlet label that somebody online noticed, and they put it out there on the internet that it said not to say anything that could be considered terroristic threats around the TV when you had the voice mode activated on. And people made fun of me. People close to me made fun of me, said it was a kooky thing to do. And then lo and behold, it turns out, yeah, these smart TVs they've been tracking you this whole time. So even your own TV, you can bet, has built-in cameras, audio listening devices, and now they're coupling it with AI. So always keep that in mind to restrict as much of that as possible. But with all the technology we have around us, it's almost impossible now to escape us. All these chips, all these smart technologies in your vehicles now. Same thing when I'm telling you that individual transportation has got to be a thing of the past. They have to restrict movement in it. That's a huge part of why we have this technology in our car. Okay. When you think you can escape the system, if you're driving a car that was built after 2017, they absolutely have the ability to go into those devices and stop your car from operating. So, little piece of advice, get an analog vehicle if you can afford it. Even if it's just a beater, it's always good to have one built before 2017 or earlier models if you can find it. What prevents, can individuals opt out without losing access to travel, employment, or services? You'll see a lot of this whenever they rolled out the biometric scanners at the airports. First, they just put them in as part of their surveillance grid. And you can't really opt out of that. If you're walking around the airport, you can bet you got a digital profile. Probably 90% of us have a digital dossier ready to go. But those new ones, all right, which never made sense to me. You're already showing your ID when you're traveling on an airplane. But now you got to scan your face, and that's supposed to be more convenient. Folks, you can opt out of that, by the way. And all these TSA personnel, they know this. Just say, no, I'd rather get my ID. I don't want my picture taken. And I've never had an issue with it. But I have heard stories of some people, they tried to opt out, and they made it hard for them, some of these TSA agents. So if you have any documented instance of that, I highly recommend you share it with Mark at defiancepress.com. We love covering this kind of thing. Who holds these global institutions accountable when they make mistakes or overstep? If the WHO funded significantly by private philanthropy, develops global health policies, where's the oversight on this stuff? Who's overseeing these policies and how it's being rolled out and the effectiveness of it? And who's overstepping their vows? When you're putting a philanthropic label on these type of programs, you really have to question, why is this considered philanthropy? This overarching need to magnify every movement and breath and fart that we take in our activity in our own household and the bathrooms. And this is just absolutely crazy. And why is interoperability, the ability to share data across borders and systems, such a priority if the goal is simply individual health records? That's a good question there. One of the famous terms I always recommend people look up is interdependence. So whenever the initial United Nations treaties were developed between organizations, whether it's the health or it's the food, you kept seeing a term pop up in their nomenclature, their legalese language, called interdependence. So when you look at the food supply, a a lot of that had to do with interdependence. When I say self-sustaining and individual movement, this is all part of it. You can't have even nations. They look at nations. You ever notice that at the UN, they call them states? They call nations states. Okay. So they look at this from a standpoint of you can't have countries that are self-sufficient. So you create interdependence. You notice we rely on a lot of produce being imported out of Mexico, a lot of meat imported out of Brazil. So we have this interdependence on other countries rather than ourselves. So of course, yeah. Why is interoperability such a priority? Well, that's not the goal is individual health records. Folks, the reason they have for rolling out these programs are never what they say. You can't just roll out shackles to someone and say, hey, we want to enslave you. You got to guise it up in the name of public safety, chips in the brain. Whenever that was a big story back in the mid 2000s, it was all for paraplegics and blind people. You see the same kind of stuff being talked about with regard to Neuralink and Tesla. And I'm always apprehensive about things like that because it's always in the name of helping humanity out. Doesn't mean technology can't be used to advance us moving forward, but when you've got bloodthirsty, competitive groups running the planet, this can be ripe for disaster. Okay. Yeah. Doesn't seamless data sharing create infrastructure for comprehensive tracking? I mean, just on its face, the public rollout of this stuff already has a lot of holes in it. So fair questions. Why are temporary emergency measures becoming permanent infrastructure? Digital health certificates were introduced for COVID-19, but they're now being institutionalized for all vaccinations and health conditions. Again, by design, folks. This pandemic, the plandemic, we're calling it here, you could see a lot of the operational setup happen 10 years before this even happened. So of course it's permanent. The only thing temporary is the infrastructure we live in. You ever notice when you look around, you look at some of the streets, depending on where you live, power lines kind of hanging. It seems like roads we're always, we could be more advanced than we really are. I always argue that's because that design is temporary. We're not meant to have this infrastructure we have forever, because the new world, the new pasture that we're being goaded into is everything about down to a cellular level of control. You can't have people. It's untidy having people run around with their own vehicles and do these power lines. They're going to get rid of them eventually. And the power you need will be in a thing like they're building in Saudi Arabia called the line. You'll live in a smart city. You'll live in a bubble dome. You'll live in a big virtual wall. And you'll be told you'll love it. You will own nothing and you will love it, for those that are familiar with that quote. Yeah, of course, these are permanent. They're institutionalized, and it's nothing to do with public health and safety, and it's everything to do with total control at a cellular level. What prevents these systems from expanding beyond health? Digital IDs being deployed through 50 and 5 include not just health records, but payment systems and comprehensive data sharing with private companies. No boundaries. When digital identity becomes mandatory for participation in society, have we crossed from citizenship to permission-based existence? This is a good and obvious question. This is obviously where it's going, folks. A permission-based existence. That's right. Even licenses to breed, I predict, will come down within the next 20 years. If your ability to work, travel, bank, or access service depends on government issues, digital credentials tied to health compliance, are you really free? Of course, the infrastructure exists. The precedents are set. The funding flows from governments and foundations committed to this vision. What remains unclear is whether citizens will recognize the architecture of control being built around them before it becomes inescapable. Yeah, and I agree with this. This isn't about oppositions to vaccines or public health. It's about whether free societies can maintain liberty when digital surveillance becomes the price of participation. So it's a good article there. Yeah, now let me see some of this here. Find the top of this article. Excuse me, folks. Let's see here. Yeah, this next one definitely ties into this. Yeah, and these are heavily sourced articles here. So, of course, I can't find the headline to this one. Okay. Yeah, okay, we covered that one. So this was something I thought you folks would find interesting. Something I found back from this was a white paper in 2012 and sort of steps in line with what I'm covering here. So bear with me. So this was from 2012. This is a corporate white paper called, let's see here. I'll just dive into it. In 2011, a partnership of between two of the world's most recognizable brands, Coca-Cola and the UK government-founded Carbon Trust, conducted an experiment in London that reads less like environmental policy research and more like a beta test for totalitarian control mechanisms. The resulting white paper, published in 2012, laid bare for tracking, monitoring, and rationing every aspect of human life under the banner of saving the planet. Of course, it's always for the children. It's always for your health. It's always for convenience, some type of benevolent reason. What makes this document particularly alarming isn't just what it proposes, but the cold, calculated manner in which it acknowledges the barrier to implementations, barriers that more than a decade later have been systematically dismantled. So here's the trial. The London trial involved 24 carefully selected participants described as light greens, meaning environmentally conscious, but not fully committed. So these are soft greenies, they're calling them, who agreed to have virtually every aspect of their daily lives monitored and quantified in carbon terms. Using a customized carbon footprinting tool, these individuals tracked and submitted data on their commuting, personal travel, electricity usage, gas consumption, food and beverage purchases, holidays, and leisure activities. Imagine being one of these willing participants to this, to have your every movement tracked like this. That's kind of a red flag there in and of itself, I would think. Every week, participants submitted this intimate data to the Carbon Trust, it's called. It's a capitalized term, by the way, which analyzed their behavior and provided feedback on their carbon performance. The trial set a daily carbon budget. This is insane. The trial set a daily carbon budget of 19.9 kilograms CO2e, a figure that would be progressively reduced over time to meet government targets. The system covered 8 lifestyle segments, creating a comprehensive surveillance apparatus that monitored essentially every meaningful human activity from the moment participants woke up until they went to sleep. This makes me wonder, they have like nodes like tied to their head that they had to sleep with. Like, how does this? They didn't analyze any sleep patterns, any flatulence while you're going to bed at night, contributing to your carbon footprint. The results were precisely what one might expect when you gamify human existence. Participants initially reduced emissions, particularly in weeks 2 and 3, before showing signs of fatigue in week 4 as the novelty wore off and restrictions became burdensome. Notably, many participants were surprised to discover that food and drink represented 22% of their carbon allowance, a revelation that opened the door to dietary control mechanisms. Folks, when I talk about total control, I mean total control. Your food, what did Bertrand Russell say? Diet injections and injunctions. Every facet of your existence has to be biologically controlled through a technical capacity. That's what I'm trying to drive home here. So this is pretty interesting. The infrastructure of control, right? From voluntary to mandatory here. Now, the white paper doesn't hide its ultimate ambitions. While the trial was voluntary, the document explicitly discusses mandatory implementation scenarios, describing a system that would function similar to a debit card. This was back in 2012, folks, when people were told this is all conspiracy garbage. Under this proposed framework, individuals would need to present both a payment card and a carbon card. That's right. You heard that right. A carbon card. When purchasing fuel or energy. You bet food's going to be part of this too. The system would electronically check their remaining carbon balance. If insufficient, they would be forced to purchase top-up allowances at the point of sale. The carbon allowance would diminish annually to align with government reduction targets, creating a tightening noose around personal consumption. Surplus allowances could be sold for real currency. So could you imagine the black market of trading your carbon allowances in the future? Creating a two-tiered system where the wealthy could maintain high consumption lifestyles by purchasing credits from those forced into carbon poverty, a system the white paper itself acknowledges would calcify existing inequalities. Of course, that's by design. Now, this isn't theoretical speculation. The mechanism described mirror exactly what China has attempted with its personal carbon account systems, where residents in cities like Wuhan earn carbon points for using public transportation, points that can be exchanged for mortgage discounts, shopping vouchers, and other rewards. This should terrify you, folks. Between 2015 and 2023, China rapidly developed these schemes nationwide, with some programs claiming over 30 million users. Yet in late 2023, Chinese authorities excluded personal carbon accounts from the country's voluntary carbon market, citing concerns about baselines and additionality, calculations and monitoring procedures, as well as the lack of a unified standard. By 2024, large-scale development had essentially ceased. Even if China's authoritarian government found these systems problematic, what does that tell us about Western governments now embracing them? Now, an interesting point here, even if you believe the carbon contribution affecting the planet, carbon is the top dog as far as its emissions, right? They're not going to follow the same rules that are being imposed on the West. Matter of fact, they're not already doing it now with the WHO treaties that are already in place there. So, of course, they're not going to do things that are going to hurt their country as they're trying to monopolize a good swath of power across the globe. But they will definitely advocate we do it. Now, they do have a lot of authoritarian measures as far as their social credit score. It may not be tied to carbon yet, but definitely count on the fact that it's coming. They just want a little bit more of a perfected system before they roll it out to their public. Probably isn't going to work if the science isn't sound enough to hammer people over the head with, fear-wise. So, the white paper repeatedly describes personal carbon allowances as an idea of its time. In 2006, when UK Government Secretary David Miliband first proposed the concept, that's right, 2006, a government investigation concluded that the scheme was too costly, unproven, and lacked public support. I'm going to venture to say it was the last part of it. It just wasn't time to roll it out. So keep hammering on the fear. They retracted. Why wasn't it in 2006? They predicted we'd be underwater again by 2020, something along those lines. We got a pandemic though. The Department for Environment, Food, and Rural Affairs declared it currently ahead of its time, and the concept vanished from UK political discourse. So what changed? So this white paper and subsequent research identifies several critical developments that have transformed personal carbon allowances from impractical fantasy to imminent reality. So buckle in, folks. The pandemic demonstrated that populations would accept unprecedented levels of surveillance and behavioral control when presented as emergency measures. That's right. Never forget your neighbors turning you in, reporting you to your bosses, your places of employment, just for not taking a jab. So you couple in a surveillance grid, a digital authoritarian infrastructure in place with it. This is an absolute nightmare. Not even George Orwell could write a book over this type of magnitude. The World Economic Forum explicitly noted in 2022 that numerous examples of personal carbon allowance programs had limited success due to lack of social acceptance, but that COVID-19 created new opportunities because populations demonstrated they would comply with restrictions. So this is the fourth industrial revolution of technologies. The WEF specifically identifies AI, blockchain, and digitization as enablers that can now track personal carbon emissions and provide individual advisories on lower carbon choices. These technologies allow for the real-time verifiable ledger that makes comprehensive personal monitoring feasible. Who remembers when the rollout of the smart meters into homes were a big thing? And I was one of these people that was making fun of them because I didn't allow them to do it on my home. Now it's pretty much, you can guarantee it's on every home. They did every kind of way to force people. Those smart meters had nothing to do with reduce energy consumption or lowering your energy bills. Folks, have you seen your energy bill lower in the past decade? Okay. These smart meters are nothing but the same thing that they were doing when they were implementing these technologies into cars. It's all about access and control. They now have access and the capability to access your home through these new advances in technology. And you can bet the apparatus, the infrastructure, it's already here, folks. It's already built around you. Don't even know it yet. Yeah, these technologies allow for the real-time verifiable ledger that makes comprehensive personal monitoring more feasible. The white paper also acknowledges that tracking and trading carbon allowances could be done relatively easy via a smartphone. So every transaction, every journey, every purchase, all monitored through the device in your pocket. I've been hearing from some of my friends. They've been sending me articles, and I apologize, guys, I haven't got around to reviewing them. Apparently the chips are kind of coming back into the news cycle. And I always argued, what do they need a chip for? You got it all right here. Everything's in your phone. Perhaps most importantly, COVID lockdowns proved that billions across the world complied with restrictions. That's right. You get enough fear in a world time scenario, people will absolutely bend over and just take it. Yeah, so there's already a template for behavioral control that climate activists openly admit they want to replicate. Yeah, imagine COVID. Imagine the COVIDian petty authoritarians now with imagine them as climate activists. These people, the ones that block the roads and claim that's somehow going to get your attention to stop driving to work. And I just never understand that. But imagine a climate activist having control over your personal consumption in your life, and they will report you. If they see you eating a steak somewhere, they found some beef maybe in the bag. This is where we're going, folks. It'll be those petty authoritarians that sick the technological bureaucrats and hounds on your ass. What makes Coca-Cola white paper particularly revealing is its frank discussion of the psychological manipulation required to make people accept such a system. The document notes that consumers show little natural inclination to change their habits and behavior, and that considerable effort would be required to alter their choices. That's right, folks. That's how we're looked at. We're looked at like we're livestock across you imagine the border of every country like a gate at a farm, and the people that rule over us are basically just they're the farmers. And when you look at the tax base as livestock, that's how you look at it. How do you herd the cattle more appropriately? And what do you do with excess livestock, by the way? The trial revealed that participants had an unwillingness to compromise, especially regarding food choices, which they viewed as intensely emotional, personal, and directly linked to their own identities and perceived well-beings. These peasants that want to pick out and eat the food that they want. How dare you? When told not to eat, drink certain items, many immediately instinctively rebelled against the concept of a budget. This presents a problem for social engineers. How do you make people accept restrictions on their most fundamental aspects of human life? What they eat, where they travel, how they heat their homes. The white paper offers several solutions. Gamification and social pressure. Gamification. Participants responded positively to group carbon challenges and were far more willing to make tangible changes when they knew others shared the same restrictions. The document explicitly recommends creating a culture of surveillance and punitive social engineering where compliance is monitored and rewarding, like Pavlov's dog. Secondary benefits. Since people won't sacrifice purely for abstract carbon reduction, the system must emphasize dual benefits like cost savings and health improvements. Notice how carbon control is increasingly packaged with healthcare messaging. Eat less meat for the climate becomes eat less meat for your health. That's right, folks, all in the name of your health and safety. The white paper acknowledges starting with energy and transport and then expanding to food and drink, with the ultimate goal being most goods and services with significant carbon footprint. Let me just break it down for you, folks. That's everything. That is everything, down to your breath. Start with something people might accept, and then expand indefinitely. The trial concludes that major brands should leverage the trust they have with consumers to raise awareness and integrate carbon messaging into existing marketing. When Coca-Cola tells you to reduce your carbon footprint, it sounds like corporate responsibility rather than social control. So for years, anyone who suggested that global organizations were planning to use climate change as a pretext for comprehensive control under individual behavior was dismissed as a conspiracy theory, yet the documented timeline tells a completely different story. In June 2020, the World Economic Forum launched the Great Reset Initiative, explicitly calling for a fundamental restructuring of economic and social systems in response to COVID-19. WEF founder Klaus Schwab declared, "We must build entirely new foundations for our economic and social systems," emphasizing the fourth industrial revolution and ESG metrics as key components. I should go ahead and add, he said it in a very James Bond villain voice and like a very totalitarian looking leather-clad outfit. Very creepy stuff. 2 years later, in September 2022, the WEF published an article titled "My Carbon: An Approach for Inclusive and Sustainable Cities." The piece explicitly stated that personal carbon allowance programs had limited success due to a lack of awareness, but that major developments in recent years, including the fourth industrial revolution technology breakthroughs, have now made systems viable. The article specifically noted that AI, blockchain, and digitization can enable tracking personal carbon, can be enabled to track personal carbon emissions and provide individual advisories on lower carbon and ethical choices. Isn't it interesting how these white papers are developed? They talk internally amongst it and they try a soft rollout. It doesn't work out yet. And then 10, 12 years later, here they are back at it. And it just so happens the whole infrastructure and the technology is ready to go. So I'm sure we're going to see more of this being pushed as it comes through, and they just gauge the public. And while they're doing that, they've collected enough data to know how much of us are going to push back on this, how much are going to be a problem. And I still think they're going to face a lot of resistance here. So they'll get clever on the messaging. And the best way to do this is obviously to scare us. So another pandemic, just look for it. So we'll keep the reporting on this. Let's see here. And it wasn't hidden in obscure documents. It was published on the WEF's website. When critics pointed to this evidence as planned social control, fact checkers rushed in to declare such concerns as conspiracy theories. Yet here was the world's most powerful elite organization openly discussing in individual carbon tracking systems just months after praising how billions worldwide complied with COVID restrictions. So I read that article again. That was a peer-reviewed paper sponsored by Coca-Cola back in 2012. So the UK government recently felt compelled to issue statements denying that digital IDs would be used to track carbon scores, calling such. I can't believe they're still trying to claim this as conspiracy. It's the writing's so apparent on the wall. Calling such claims clearly false and entirely nonsense. Yet the same government founded the Carbon Trust that partnered with Coca-Cola on the Personal Carbon Allowance Project. The same government whose environmental secretary first proposed mandatory carbon rationing in 2006. Are we supposed to believe they've abandoned these plans or simply that they're not ready to admit them yet? Yeah, I don't think so. So even some that are sympathetic to these causes, these carbon reduction goals, even some of them academic researchers identified disturbing implications of personal carbon allowance systems. Yeah, where the perfect accounting, basically the system becomes a cage and its efficiency is the measure of our confinement. Under this scenario, personal carbon ledgers would be tied to digital identities, making every action traceable. Exceeding your carbon budget could trigger travel restrictions, increased insurance costs, and social penalties within the gamified systems of public shaming and rewards. You could definitely envision, we know how they view the elderly, right? The elderly are always on the front lines of these test cases. And, if you're elderly and you're living alone there and they don't, you've aged a long time, that's a big carbon footprint. We're going to start restricting your heat in the wintertime. Maybe they can find ways to slowly kill off the elderly population while they're at it, because that's the humane thing to do. A carbon caste system would emerge where the wealthy simply purchase offsets while the poor are restricted. The system intended to foster equity instead calcifies existing inequalities under a veneer of objective environmentalism, of course. The data collection required would extend to your smart energy meter, your connected vehicle, your financial transactions, all fed into AI, which calculates your personal carbon ledger in real time. This isn't paranoid speculation. It's the logical conclusions of the systems being openly designed and tested. So, yeah, and this goes on here. Total surveillance, behavioral conditioning, wealth extraction, wealth transfer. This is the test run is over. This article goes on to claim, and it's true. The system's design, it's already here. It's ready to roll out at any point in time on this stuff. So let's see what else we got here in the stack here. I wanted to stay along these lines because this was extremely interesting. Let's see. Let me just make sure I stay organized here, folks. I do like my paper, so forgive me as I go through some of the details here and see what other. I had a stack, and I kind of get an idea because we do not script this show. I just kind of come in and get some of this information ahead of the show, and then just kind of go on the fly here. While we're talking about some of these technologies, some of this caught my eye as far as some of the latest vaccine news. So let's go over some of this together. If I can get my shit organized here. Okay. All right. So the FDA's profound revelation examining claims that COVID killed at least 10 children. Now, this is what we know about. So I'm sure if we really went through the rabbit hole, there's a lot more than 10 kids that died from this is my bet on this. But we'll go over what we know, and what's being reported. In late November of 2025, a bombshell memo from the Food and Drug Administration shook the medical establishment and vindicated longstanding concerns from skeptics on the COVID-19 vaccine. For the first time in history, the FDA officially acknowledged that COVID-19 vaccine have killed American children, a revelation that the agency itself described as profound. The 3,000-word internal memo authored by Dr. Vinay Prasad, the FDA's newly appointed chief medical and scientific officer and director of the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, stated unequivocally that at least 10 children have died after and because of receiving COVID vaccination. This admission, of course, raises far more questions than it answers, and the story behind it reveals a deeply troubling pattern of institutional failure, deliberate obfuscation, and potential regulatory capture that should concern every American parent. Now, as I'm going through this, after what I just covered there, force tracking, vaccine passports, measuring every action you're taking, tied into our healthcare industry and your vaccination status, and these poison shots, making sure they mandate compliance on you. This is not good, folks. This is not good. Prasad's memo sent to the FDA staff on November 28th reviewed 96 child deaths reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System between 2021 and 2024. Using an internal unpublished analysis, FDA staff concluded that no fewer than 10 of these deaths were related to COVID vaccination, with myocarditis identified as the suspected cause. So the memo's language was striking in its departure from typically bureaucratic prose. Prasad didn't mince words about what had transpired during the previous administration. This is a profound revelation, he wrote. For the first time, the U.S. FDA will acknowledge that COVID-19 vaccines have killed American children. The memo's language was striking in its departure from typical. He went on further, accusing the Biden administration of coercing children through school and workplace mandates to receive a vaccine that could result in death, and suggesting that the real number is higher than the 10 confirmed deaths. I think we can all assume that is most certainly going to be the case. Perhaps most controversially, Prasad instructed any FDA staff members who disagreed with his conclusions to submit their resignation letters, calling opposition unethical and illegal. Good on him. The memo characterized the previous FDA decisions as dishonest and claimed the agency had ignored safety concerns for years. So pretty interesting there. Now, there's definitely some rippling effects to this. Of course, people are more skeptical than ever on COVIDs, and then news on vaccinations in general. I've been seeing a lot of local news channels reporting that vaccination rates are down, and of course, leading to the this next story here, which I always thought was an interesting vaccine for infants and newborns, STD, vaccinating against STDs as soon as it just sounds wild on the face of it. But we'll go into some of the background to this and shoot you straight here. After 34 years, the CDC panel ends universal hepatitis B birth dose recommendation on December 5th in a chaotic and contentious vote that sent shockwaves through American public health. The CDC and Prevention's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices voted 8-3 to overturn a policy that has stood since 1991. For the first time in 34 years, newborn babies in the United States will no longer be universally recommended to receive the Hep B vaccine within 24 hours of birth. Instead, parents of infants Born to Hep B negative mothers will now engage in shared decision making with their healthcare providers about whether and when their newborn receives the shot. If they choose to delay, ACIP now recommends waiting until the infant is at least 2 months old. This is still not good enough. 2 months old, you're developing an immune system still. I mean, shots at this young age, trying to build immunity. This is not a good idea, folks. The seemingly technical policy change represents far more than a medical decision. It's the culmination of a years-long battle over vaccine mandates, parental rights, government transparency, and the fundamental question of who decides what gets injected into American babies into the within their first hours of life. Yeah, the vote came 2 days after tense deliberation marked by confusions, delays, procedural irregularities, and what NBC News describes as misinformation-filled meetings. We can bet, judging from the nomenclature the mainstream media is using, they're just not happy with the unconventional, inconvenient documents that are making their way inside these RFK Jr. appointment circles. Yeah, and this goes on and on. I'm sure a lot of folks that are listening to this, you're familiar with the Hep B vaccine. Yeah, this just goes on and on and on. So, RFK Jr. still going at it. He's doing his thing up there, and I think he's doing a pretty good job so far. Let's see. Yeah, and this article goes on and say, well, the World Health Organization recommends it still the way that it used to be in all of its nation's report and nation's guidelines. Let's see here. Yeah, and you even had California Governor Gavin Newsom blasting the CDC panel's decision on this. So I guess when it's Republicans in charge, we can question what they're doing, but when Democrats are, just go with the science, man. Just don't question everything, which is, pretty antithetical to science in and of itself. So basically, yeah, you'll have the ability now to not be strong-armed into a Hep B shot after your baby's born. But don't worry, folks. They'll still try to convince you to do it. So just be careful in these hospitals if you're having children there. Yeah, and really, it looks like they're taking a look at all these childhood vaccination schedules. So we'll see where this goes. But again, even questioning the fact that people are injured by vaccines is supposed to be a big conspiracy theory. There's that famous interaction on The View with RFK Jr.'s wife, who boldly, went up there and she just got, a struggle session for about 45 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, so this will get interesting as we cover more and more of it. Okay. I did want to get into some of this other news. I told you guys I would cover what's going on with TPUSA and Candace Owens. Let me just see if I can high level this. Yeah, nearly 3 months after Charlie Kirk's assassination on September 10th at Utah Valley, the conservative movement finds itself embroiled in an unprecedented public feud between Charlie Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA, and former TPUSA Communications Director Candace Owens. Yeah, this is now turned into a bitter confrontation. So on Wednesday, December 2nd, Blake Neff, producer of The Charlie Kirk Show, delivered a forceful 15-minute statement addressing what he characterized as months of lies and innuendos from Owens. Breaking the organization's extended silence since Kirk's death, Neff methodically outlined Owens' allegations, which have ranged from claims of Egyptian military surveillance planes tracking Kirk's widow Erica to suggestions of financial impropriety, totaling millions of dollars to insinuate that Kirk's own security team deliberately withheld first aid to ensure his death. For the he's quoted to say, for the past 2.5 months, there's a topic that has flooded our inbox, has been nonstop on social media, but which we have almost totally avoided on this show, Neff stated. He described how harassment directed at TPUSA staff and Kirk's friends had become worse than the vitriol from those who actually celebrated Kirk's assassination, calling it evil. Neff explained TPUSA's previous silence stemmed from multiple factors: the beliefs that Owens' claims were so absurd that nobody would believe them, a desire to avoid feeding the trolls and hope that Owens would return that friendship and stop what she's doing. But nearly 3 months later, with Owens showing no signs of relenting, TPUSA announced it would host a live stream to address each allegation comprehensively. So Neff publicly invited Owens to participate in the live stream. They were going to do it at Phoenix Studio, setting the stage for what many conservatives hoped would finally provide clarity on the competing narratives. Initially, Owens did appear enthusiastic. You can pick the place, you can pick the time, she said. I say we do it tomorrow. We don't need to plan for this. I want it to be authentic. However, when TPUSA announced the specifics December 15th at 2 p.m. local time from Charlie Kirk's studio in Phoenix, Owens balked. She objected on multiple grounds. The live stream would conflict with their own daily podcast time slot. She learned about the date through social media rather than direct communication. The 1 week notice was insufficient for travel planning and TPUSA's insistence on an in-person appearance rather than a virtual option. It is quite strange that I'm learning about this date and time via an X post, Owens posted. She offered to appear virtually, noting she could cancel my daily podcast to accommodate the live stream, and that appearing remotely would allow her to manage homeschooling responsibilities. TPUSA rejected the virtual option. Neff announced the organization would proceed with the live stream regardless of Owens' participation. So this is it is pretty exhausting. I won't lie. Again, because a lot of these reports I'm digging, it's not jiving with what I've listened to on our actual podcast, and I think that's what's driving people to listen to it even more. And this would be a healthy discourse, in my opinion. But okay, she can't show up on site, so then just do the virtual stream. I mean, I want to hear answers to a lot of this stuff. Yeah, the December 15th live stream will proceed at 4 p.m. Eastern time from TPUSA's Phoenix studio with or without Candace. TPUSA has promised to address a clear and comprehensive way every allegation raised by Owens and walk through everything carefully and thoroughly. Yeah, whether this live stream provides the clarity both sides claim to seek, it or simply deepens the divide, it remains to be seen. For now, the conservative movement watches a public autopsy of not just Charlie Kirk's death, but the trust and relationships he once helped build. As Blake Neff stated in his announcement, our motivation for doing this is not out of any obligation to Candace. It's about honoring Charlie. We feel a deep responsibility to protect his legacy, his work, and the truth. Candace Owens, for her part, maintains she's asking questions because people believe in me and trust me, and that anyone who truly cared about Kirk wouldn't want to have every stone unturned. So again, this goes on, and I saw Tim Pool and her going at it, and obviously, yes, of course, this stuff is unhealthy. But you know what's more unhealthy than that? Having open-ended questions go unanswered for a major political assassination in this country. Okay. Yes. And again, she's came out and claimed that French intelligence is involved and has paid for her assassination. And we've seen some kind of non-committal answers from Kash Patel. I'd be curious to hear from the director of national intelligence on those claims about her a supposed assassination plot to Candace Owens. That would be pretty interesting to hear from Tulsi Gabbard from the DNI on this stuff. And again, you know, I think so that's December 15th. So what is that? That's Monday. So look for some breaking news from Defiance Daily on this one. We might come into the studio and see if we can cover that live and see get some live reactions to this stuff. But right now it sounds like there's going to be a parallel stream. There's going to be a parallel live stream with Candace Owens show and then a parallel with TPUSA. My whole thing right now is, okay, yeah, Candace Bogg, she said name and time and place and didn't do it, but now she's offering to do it. So why not just do it virtually then? Just do it virtually. Just bring her in virtually and just do the damn thing. What does it matter now at this point, whether it's in person or not? And you know, some people I've seen on X, they're talking about, well, why would she do that? If she's suspicious about TPSA being or members of it being involved, and then you're going to go plan a flight down to Phoenix when she's a little paranoid about her situation there. Well, it's kind of fair play there. And it is a little weird to coordinate something like that in public. Like, why not reach out to her, find availability, and y'all get it worked out and then announce it and then do it that way instead of this thing. Well, you're not going to come in, then we're just going to proceed without you. She's the one directing a lot of these questions, and she's gotten a lot of different tips that turned out to be accurate. She's provided receipts to a lot of things, and then you're just going to push it out. You're not going to try to find a way to make it work. Like, this is our date. This is the time we're going to do it. And then balk at doing it virtual. Just bring her into the podcast, bro. We all want to see answers to this stuff. Listen, guys, as far as the GOP and Republicans are concerned, you're the momentum for anything in the midterm, it's gone. The midterm momentum is gone. I would be shocked for any type of victories happening between now and the midterms. I'm just going to say it now. This stuff is getting exhausting. Okay. We're seeing a lot of good things out of the administration, but we're still not seeing the accountability that we all voted for. Okay. Yes, self-deportations, mass deportations, but the bumbling over the Epstein files and then, you know, the FBI just closing the cases on these lone wolf cases. I mean, we're still being lied to, very honestly. And then we'll get to the next story here, which is stuff like this. Okay. January 6th pipe bomb, Brian Cole. The official story is that 30-year-old, and this is after, by the way, that the Blaze Media came out with that story on this female that was supposedly involved. Now we got a completely different character here, and I'm just going to high level run through what's been uncovered about this fella Brian Cole. Brian Cole Jr. acting alone, always a lone wolf scenario, and motivated by pro-Trump views and anarchist leaning, with 2 viable pipe bombs planted them at the RNC and DNC on the night of January 5th, was finally identified in 2025 using old purchase records and cell tower data that had just been sitting there. Folks, for those that remember, they said the cell phone data from that day was destroyed, and now somehow we found it after the Blaze broke their story, identifying somebody completely different. So who do you believe here? Okay. That the FBI just magically find a patsy for us to look at and don't want us looking at this other one over here, because the Blaze retracted that article that they ran about that identified shooter or pipe bomber, I'll call it. The sudden breakthrough after nearly 5 years, the forensics on the devices, conflicting public statements by officials, and the now collapsed Blaze, Glenn Beck, CIA Capitol cop theory, create a story that is internally inconsistent and politically convenient on multiple fronts. So here's a structured rundown, okay, of the key details and the inconsistencies. So the core claims from the DOJ and the FBI and major outlets. According to the criminal complaint and mainstream reporting, Brian Cole of Woodbridge, Virginia, described by family as socially isolated, almost autistic-like and very antisocial, working at the family bail bond business and briefly for DoorDash. He constructed and placed 2 pipe bombs outside the RNC and the DNC on the night of January 5th. Devices did not detonate, but are now officially described as viable explosives devices capable of lethal harm. Here's the forensic links used to identify them. So purchases from 2019, 2020, even after January 6th, apparently. 6 1 inch by 8 galvanized pipes. Black and galvanized end caps matching those on the bombs. White Walmart kitchen timers identical to those on the devices. 9-volt batteries and connectors from Micro Center. Red and black 14-gauge wire, steel wool used as igniter material. And the cell tower data. Cole's phone allegedly made 7 data connections between 7:39 p.m. and 8:24 p.m. on January 5th. Those pings line up with the route visible on surveillance footage of the hooded bomber. DNC at 7:54 p.m., RNC placed at 8:16 p.m. Multiple outlets report that after arrest, Cole spoke with the FBI for more than 4 hours and admitting to planting the devices, expressing support for Trump and anarchist beliefs. He allegedly believed the 2020 election was stolen. So, transporting an explosive device across state lines with intent to kill, injure, intimidate, or destroy property, attempted malicious destruction using explosive materials under 18 U.S. Section Code 844. So, Pam Bondi explicitly says they cracked the case by re-examining existing evidence that had been sitting at the FBI, so not from new tips. So they just had a file sitting there, kind of like Epstein's files on the desk. They were just sitting there. You know, nobody reviewed them. And then here we go. We just found them, guys. And then we got the guy who had pro-Trump leanings. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino say they rebuilt the case from scratch when they came in, reran every lead, retested all evidence, brought in experts, and used new technology. These are the same folks that said Epstein killed himself after reviewing that. To close the case on Thomas Crook, saying he was a lone wolf. He didn't interact with anybody else. He was not on the radar. Of course, they blame both. They both blame Biden-era leadership for stalling the investigation. Of course, the single biggest credibility issue is for years, the FBI openly admitted the pipe bomber case was unsolved and active and ongoing, but with no named suspect and repeated public pleas for tips. During that same period, the FBI and DOJ aggressively used cell phone geofence data at the Capitol to identify, charge, and prosecute well over 2,000 January 6 defendants for being in or around the complex for a 3-hour window. Folks, even people that weren't at the Capitol were somehow dragnet into this with this new technology that somehow just didn't work in identifying this pipe bomber. Yet now the Cole complaint leans heavily on retail and online purchase records that are easy to subpoena. Cell tower data that precisely matches the bomber's route in a very narrow time window on the evening of January 5th. If cell tower and financial records were there all along and could on their own identify Cole to the point of a confession in one morning's arrest in a 4-hour interview, it raises the questions. Why were those same investigative steps not taken or pursued during 5 years when the FBI was extremely aggressive in using digital data against much lower level January 6th defendants? Officials are explicitly admitting that the break did not come from new information, but from new management looking at old data. The admission validates what even more some mainstream critics said for years. The case was either deprioritized or politically frozen at the top. So the DOJ and mainstream outlets are now stressing that the evidence were viable pipe bombs capable of blowing up and killing hundreds of people, of course. even though they didn't detonate it. Congressional and Inspector General material acknowledged that the devices, whether viable or not, worked perfectly as a diversion, pulling at least 3 bomb squads and multiple units away from the Capitol during crucial early breach window. Steve Baker from the Blaze and others repeatedly asserted, citing pipe bomb tech source, that the devices were not actually viable and that they were essentially props planted as a controlled diversion to free up the Capitol for breach. That narrative dovetailed with suspicions that federal intelligence insiders orchestrated a Fedsurrection scenario using fake or inert devices to shape law enforcement posture while blaming MAGA supporters later. Now, if Cole really is a lone wolf extremist building devices from publicly available how-to instructions, why would they conveniently behave like what Baker and others previously described as stage props, failing to detonate but succeeding brilliantly as a diversion? The DOJ's insistence that the bombs were viable is directly at odds with years of leak-based whistleblower-style claims that senior official told investigators that the devices were not viable. The government is trying to close that gap simply by asserting viability in the Cole narrative, but without publicly releasing full forensic reports or photos detailed enough to settle it. Another glaring inconsistency is how location data has been weaponized. For January 6 defendants, the FBI relied heavily on geofencing. For the bomber case, for years, the public story was that the bomber was anonymous and could not be identified despite high-quality video in a narrow 1-hour window on January 5th in a small area of D.C. Now with Cole, the affidavit suddenly reveals that his phone pings line up perfectly with the bomber's path and timestamps. Commentators across the spectrum have pointed out that this is exactly the kind of data the FBI had no hesitation using against ordinary protesters, but somehow did or would not use it to find the bomber until now. This fuels suspicion that the bomb case was held back deliberately, and the Bureau only decided to solve it once the political and institutional incentive changed. And for those that remember, in early November this year, the Blaze published a major investigation by Steve Baker, alleging that the January 6th bomber was a female former Capitol police officer who later went on to the CIA. The Blaze claimed they had access to non-public surveillance footage of the bomber, supposedly from an unnamed source they called Armidas. A forensic gait analysis, that's GAIT, allegedly showed a 94 to 98% match between the ex-officer's walking pattern. A neighbor of the woman was allegedly tied by the FBI to a vehicle, a Metro card associated with the bomb planning timeline. Kyle Seraphin, a former FBI agent, was quoted saying he worked surveillance on that neighbor, reinforcing the implication this was an inside job. By late November, CBS and others reported that the woman Blaze named had an ironclad alibi. She was at home with her dogs during the critical time frame with video evidence to prove it. She had resigned from Capitol Police and gone to work for Federal Intelligence Agency, but there was no evidence tying her to planting the bombs. Interesting enough, the Blaze didn't get sued over that, which is pretty interesting. So reporting from CBS and Status News added a twist that makes this whole thing even more fraught. The Blaze, or someone affiliated with it, allegedly tipped off ODNI about the woman. A staffer in the director's office drafted a classified memo identifying her and pulled sensitive personal data for distribution among officials. That memo later surfaced in congressional reporting and media coverage and fed into a narrative that the bomber was tied to intelligence circles. So after Cole's arrest, when Brian was arrested, the mainstream media did its round on the Blaze. And the official story, as it's evolved in media, hits a very specific political sweet spot, by the way. Cole allegedly supports Trump, believes the 2020 election was stolen, and also harbors anarchist beliefs. That framing allows the state to tie the pipe bomb directly to Trump's grievances. It also paints Cole as ideologically unstable and fringe, what makes it easier to accept contradictory behaviors pro-Trump, yet planting bombs at both party HQs. There is still no public coherent narrative about what the point of the bombs were, especially if they were truly valuable but did not go off. They were planted at both parties' HQs instead of only, say, the DNC or high-valued targets. Their discovery just happened to strip manpower from the Capitol Police per the timeline. The official line on the motive remains essentially, we don't know yet. He's a Trump-supporting anarchist who confessed. Yeah, separate from the Blazes female cop story, Glenn Beck also ran a high-visibility segment built around footage from outside the DNC. Footage allegedly shows a man, possibly a Secret Service agent, exiting the Metropolitan Police vehicle with a bag in hand. He walks out of frame toward the exact area where the DNC pipe bomb was later found. He returns to frame a couple minutes later without the bag. Roughly 15 minutes later, the bomb is discovered. Baker, in that conversation with Beck, explicitly said this is not proof that the man planted the device, but it demands answers, argues the FBI could resolve it by releasing the DNC's own security camera footage aimed directly at the bench where the bomb sat, which had never been released publicly. So still footage we haven't seen in public, which is interesting to say the least. Asserts based on bomb tech source that the devices were not viable and used as pre-planned diversion, and that this young man was groomed, that he had helped, referring more generally to whoever the bomber might be. This line of reporting has not been formally walked back the way the female Officer Gate analysis story has. Instead, it now stands on awkward tension with the claim that Cole acted alone, the new insistence that bombs were fully viable, the absence of any government explanation for the man with the bag for withholding the DNC's best angle camera footage. So, yeah. Yeah, some are calling the arrest very convenient, almost too convenient, are pointing out that the evidence against Cole is explicitly old evidence gathered under the Biden administration, implying the stall was political, not due to the lack of leads. Others were floating the idea that while Cole may be connected to the devices, the full story, who he was talking to, who may have groomed or encouraged him, has still not been told. Yeah, so yeah, and again, we're still trying to figure out what the motive is, what are the details on it. You know, the Blaze does this bombshell reporting. The FBI immediately, starts responding from that rapid deployment account that they created on Twitter, right on the cusp of Tucker releasing his Thomas Crooks. And again, there's other footage out there that would help. You could just release to the public to do it, but they're not doing it. Okay, so it's like, even when you have, your team in here and on power and on your side, and you can get a lot of these answers and you can just release footage, we're still not seeing it, folks. We're still not seeing it. So, yeah, this is just, it's kind of par for the course. And look, again, we kept saying it on the show with regard to the news on, the FBI's arrest of Tyler Robinson. Some of these questions and some of the speculation can go away pretty quick, and it wouldn't hurt the case. Is it really going to hurt the case to release footage of him turning himself in? Is it really going to hurt the case to have, some of the interaction, some of the interaction recordings and what was being said? But the biggest part is that FBI surveillance video. We have him jumping off the roof, Tyler Robinson, after Charlie Kirk assassination. We got the part jumping off the roof, but not the minute, 2 minutes before that. That's clearly going to show him obviously setting up. There's got to be, that footage is out there somewhere. And then the court's now fighting for public access to the trial. So this isn't exactly the type of activity that's going to quell any conspiracy. All it's going to do is just advocate more of it. And can you blame people for questioning it even more now? Regardless of the outcome of this TPUSA and Candace Owens spat, there are basic questions that are still not being answered. Okay. The convenient motive all in one text chain, and we still don't know anything about this furry boyfriend that's now in protective custody and living. Who are these people? Who's connected? And why can't some of this footage, TPUSA is in possession, or at least the FBI is now, or the Utah. I'm not sure where it went now, but those angles around Charlie Kirk being shot. Some of the excuses from TPUSA personnel not to release them, they're a little bit suspect, folks. It's fair. It's fair game. You have the wherewithal to go and get those SIM cards and make sure that nobody goes and messes with them, and then you immediately turn them in the app. And it's like, apparently Candace Owens got to view one of these behind the scenes show, but there was professional cameras all around those angles. Are we going to see any of that? Some of that excuses was, well, we don't want more angles going out there to showing his death. I got news for you folks. It's already out there. It's already out there. So people are demanding answers. And right now, the way the trial's going, which is going to be next month, I don't think it'll start next month. The arraignment and some of the final rulings and getting to the point of trial is going to happen next month. I want to say it's January 6th. We'll be here. We'll be breaking that live here at the Defiance Daily Show. So be sure to tune in live to see more on that. But fair questions, fair speculation, and obviously a lot of questions still unanswered to it. And now you got these spats within all these influence in here. And the thing I like about it, though, is it does show like there's a lot of influences that are bought and paid for, but there's still a lot of freelance people out there. So I'd like to think that the mainstream, swamp monster, I guess we'll call it, they don't have everybody buttoned up the way they do on the mainstream media side of things. So still pretty healthy skepticism there. I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. But we'll see we'll see where this goes. Okay, we'll see where it goes. We'll try to be breaking live. I don't know what we can cover live during two, and we're gonna be covering two podcasts essentially. This is ridiculous. If I'm TPUSA, just invite her in virtually. I mean, just have the discussion. Just break it down. Yeah, there's an opportunity here, I feel like, to bring some of these people together. But I mean, seeing some of the donations, what is happening to the donations at TPUSA? Are they coming from the folks that maybe Charlie wouldn't want to? I think there's a fair questions here. TPUSA can't just be another mainstream Republican organization. I mean, I feel like this is what I've seen in our lifetime. We saw what happened with the Tea Party. The Tea Party now is basically a soft rhino convention. I mean, is that what they're doing to TPUSA now? It's going to be an Israeli first agenda. And I don't care what you feel about the whole Israel topic and all that. Our family first. Okay. I don't want to hear about politicians coming to this country to serve another country and how that's their primary focus and their passion are doing any of it. I don't think most folks are seeing this as a healthy thing in our public and political discord in this country. And I tend to agree with that. So, yeah, is TPUSA just going the way of an eventual neo-hawk, neoconservative propping movement? Are they just going to start funding money for mainstream political positions? And then basically that movement gets neutered like the Tea Party was. And then we go on to the next grassroots, at least the one that starts that way, until somebody comes in, takes it over. God forbid somebody gets assassinated like what happened here. So very interesting dynamics happening in the conservative movement. And we'll follow along here. But really, I think the biggest thing is this war on human civilization, especially Western civilization. We're trying our best here to document it to the best of our capabilities here at the Defiance Daily Show. And I do appreciate everybody tuning in. That's pretty good audience here, folks. Really appreciate the support here. Don't forget to check out defiancepress.com. Again, that's defiancepress.com. Check out our catalog of books and authors. Your support means the world to us. Please, please, please go and buy the books at defiancepress.com or go into Amazon and look up some of the authors under Defiance Press imprint. Also, if you are in the market for books, listen, folks, we've got a number of different imprints. We've got a sci-fi fantasy imprint in Stellar Frontier. We've got a fantasy imprint called Iron Phoenix that we're rolling out. We're also doing a book, Keynote Books. We're looking for business-orientated authors, people that have successful backgrounds that are wanting to share their story, Keynote Books. So it doesn't have to be a political thriller, folks. You don't need a political acclamations to get signed on by our publishing outfit here at Defiance Press and Publishing. It's that's a reason we have a number of different imprints. We're even doing true crime, murder mystery, cold case files under Crimson Key Publishing. So reach out to us. Go to defiancepress.com, hit that Get Publishing link, follow the prompts and protocols. You do not have to be political in nature to submit a manuscript for your title. That's it here for our show on the Defiance Daily Show. Sorry, Mark couldn't be with us. He is putting out some technological fires, I suppose. Poor guy was having some technical issues, but that's okay. We love him. I'll have some choice words for him after the show, and I got to pick on Mark a little bit here, but really, really grateful for everything he does, guys, and he means the world to us too. Don't forget this show, of course, is brought to you in large part by the man, the myth, the legend. That's my pops there, David Thomas Roberts, and Mama there, Rose Roberts. So I love you both. Miss you, pops, all the time, daily. And think about you a lot as we continue going through the grind of our daily lives and all the chaos and everything. And especially with holidays, these times get pretty difficult. Won't lie to you, it gets pretty difficult here. But can't say enough about my mom and pops, and I love them both and love them dearly. So shout out to you, Pop. Shout out to you, Mom. Thank you for everything. Again, check out our sponsors at J. Bradley Custom Pools. Also check out rftmedia.com. Really, really appreciate the support, folks. And I hope everybody has a great week, a very productive week. God bless you all. Stay close to God, stay reliable, and be good out there. Have a good day.